Hello, you are watching the Pure Passion Biz Podcast with Akua Hinds, and I am your host, Akua Hinds. Today, I have the joy of interviewing an author, a business owner, and a therapist. Her name is Cherokee Cabell, and she is based in New Jersey in the United States. Cherokee has a company called Little Bits Counseling and Therapy, and she works as an owner and therapist at her business, specifically counseling and working with adults who are 18 years of age and older who reside in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. And I had the pleasure to read this book, Rain to Rain. This was written by Cherokee and was released this year. Is that right, Cherokee?
Yes, January of this year. Yes.
It was released this year. And so I read this, I got this a few weeks ago, and I have to say that this book is quite impactful. I highly recommend it. Whether or not you're somebody who has gone through traumatic situations, I think that this book is really a great book for anyone. If they haven't gone through some of the circumstances that are in the book, maybe this book will help them to relate to other people who they meet who might have gone through some similar situations. I myself found myself relating to some of the experiences, not all, but some of them, and I found the book to be quite open. So I don't think anything is held back. I think it's just a very open book. It explores a lot of topics and takes you through Rain, the character, through starting from infancy to childhood, adolescence, adulthood, motherhood, and different life situations. So excited to talk with Cherokee about your book today. Cherokee, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. I'm happy that you're able to share some insight on your wonderful book here. So your book, as we talked about, it was mentioned, we mentioned that it was published earlier this year, your book, Rain to Rain. So how long had you been thinking about writing your book, and what motivated you to make it happen?
So I've been thinking about it for a little bit. I was really inspired by a friend of mine who kept pushing, saying that she saw a book in my future. So COVID had hit, everything, was going on. So I had started my business in 2021 and then just looking for other avenues. And she just kept ringing in my ear, I see other things happening for you. So that's when I decided to just sit down and start writing. The story was already there. So it was just putting everything on paper, how I wanted to compile everything, certain things that I did want to tell, certain things that I may not have wanted to put in the book. I want it to be more of educational, inspirational, and empowerment book. So the inspiration really came from, just different stories, different challenges that individuals have gone through. And I'm hoping that, some people can relate to, some of those things.
I'm sure that there are people who can relate to it. I mean, myself, I did relate to some of the situations, and I could also see where one of the lessons I got from the book was that if certain patterns, certain family patterns aren't broken, they're just going to continue. And it'll become a cycle. And it'll be harder and harder and harder for each generation that comes next to break the patterns until someone decides to make that change. And was that part of the message that you were trying to impact through your book?
It was part of it. I think the main message was that, individuals who have gone through these things, that they are not alone. And I don't want anyone to feel that they are the only ones going through, these different experiences, and then there's no one else to talk to, or there's nothing that they can do to heal themselves. Also, that whatever has happened to them does not define them. They can be so much more than things that have been said or done to them. And the generational cycles, that was part of it, just to show the patterns of how certain things happen in a family, and then without knowing, they're just trickled down from generation to generation. and until someone's able to recognize it. And that can be the hard part. It takes many generations sometimes for people even to recognize. I think in the last couple of years, we've just been, everyone's been more comfortable with mental health, seeking treatment, talking about, feeling anxious or not feeling as up in their moods changing and things like that. So I think society as a whole is starting to invite and welcome individuals to be able to talk about, their mental health. So the book was really a big, huge part about, making sure that people feel that they aren't alone and that there's other things that they can do to help them, and that other people go through similar things as well.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I found quite nice about the book is that you include pages in the book for the reader to write down their thoughts after reading, the chapter. And also there's some gentle confrontation as well, where in the book you write down, okay, this is, so for instance, if it's talking about whether it's a bullying issue or an abuse issue or trauma, just any of those traumas, you explain, from a professional standpoint, what that means and how to work through it and how a victim would feel or somebody who's gone through it would feel. You encourage the readers to get help if it's certain parts of the book are triggering them. I thought that was quite nice because that's not always in a self-help book. I would consider this to be a self-help book. Would you consider
Yes.
this to be a self-help book? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And I thought that was quite nice. Now, it's interesting because I had originally thought, I wonder if this is a book that someone should read with a mental health professional by their side. But I think I found it to be quite an easy read. And because of those opportunities to write down your thoughts, I thought, now, wouldn't this be interesting for the reader, um, to write down their thoughts, but also to reread it with help of a mental health professional they're working with. Excuse me, I'm sorry. And then work through some of the issues
Yeah.
that they're working with, and then go back and reread it and write down their thoughts, maybe on a separate piece of paper,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
see their
I
reaction.
took a lot of responsibility in the book with my readers in mind. And that's why you'll see a lot of the pages that will say, this is, if you're triggered, this is a number that you can call, people that you can reach out to. Because it's an easy read as far as there's not a lot of big words in there. You can understand the text and things like that. It can be a difficult read, just the nature, the content of what's in the book. And if it's hitting close to home, I want individuals to be able to say, okay, well, I need to take a break and I need to maybe go talk to someone. And that was my main thing. I wanted to make sure that as a professional, I did my part in trying to keep individuals safe. And my passion is really on empowering and educating. So that's why there's the educational pieces of the book, and then having them be able to reflect on certain parts that did relate to them in the book. And if they are working with someone, there is a part in there that it does say that this book is not to be substituted for treatment. It is encouraged that you do speak to a professional. So working with a professional, it can be beneficial, using those blank lines to just go back and reflect on certain parts of the book that may have resonated with them, any questions that they may have, and if they're working with a professional, then go back and ask them, I'm not sure how this would have, I felt this, but I didn't know it was, sexual abuse, and that's just what happened in our family. Because a lot of individuals, it does become normalized, and people don't really understand that just because it's normal doesn't mean that it's right. So I took a huge responsibility in making sure that I am keep trying my best to keep them safe, giving them numbers that they can, call, and people that they can reach out to if they were triggered. And then the other part is just educating them, letting them know that these things are what they are, so that they can be educated on some of the things that may have happened to them or friends or other family members.
Yes, I'm sure that, is something that I myself as a reader, I really appreciated the fact that some of the passages were quite explicit, because I think that there are people who wonder, what if they've gone through something similar, they probably wonder, well, how do I even put this into words?
Hmm.
But through the book, right, um, a reader can see, that sometimes you just have to say it, right? You just have to open up. You just have to say what happens. You just have to face it head on. And I wonder, um, what age group do you think is best? What age group do you recommend, to start, exploring your book?
I would say about 16 or up. It can go a little bit lower depending on maturity. Like you said, there are some stories in there that are explicit. So it would really it really depend on the maturity of the individual. If it is someone who is a little bit younger, maybe 13, 14, um, maybe reading it or letting the parent know that, this is, parents can also have this book and read it with their child. Because again, it's that educational piece of it. And as parents, we don't always talk about those things as far as what could happen or what may have happened to them, growing up. So um, I would say 16 years of age or older, but it can go younger just depending on the maturity level of the individual. And it's male, female, non-binary. It doesn't really matter how you identify. It can be used for, everyone.
Yes, I mean, it is written from a female perspective. I mean, the character is female, but um, I think that because it's not just girls who
Mhm.
experience sexual abuse and trauma, there are boys who also unfortunately
Exactly.
experience
Mhm.
it too. So it's great that your book is so welcoming. Um, it was quite eye-opening. I've never been through that myself, sexual abuse trauma like that. But I sympathized and I empathized, and I could see where what you were saying, how sometimes I suppose in some families it just becomes normalized and not talked about, or just um, ignored.
Skimmed over, yeah. Yeah. Um, it's not a pleasant conversation to have with anyone. So yeah, there are a lot of families who, you do survivor may, say, this has happened to me, and they're not believed. So that just shuts them down. They no longer have a voice. So they no longer think that it's a safe, they can go out, and then they start blaming themselves that, maybe it's something that I did to cause this. So there's a lot of different core beliefs that may come up with um, not being believed or not being able to discuss it with whomever. And it's not just parents, it can be teachers. There are students who go to their teachers and say, this is what's going on in my home, and nothing really happens. Um, so it's not the most pleasant conversation. Unfortunately, it does happen. And with parents, I think we hold some guilt if, our child were to come to us and say, this is what's going on. We're going to immediately blame ourselves, especially if it's, another family member, babysitter, or a boyfriend or a girlfriend. We're going to like, well, how did I let this person into my child's life to be able to do this? So I think sometimes the parents are trying to also protect themselves because they don't want to have to deal with, oh, well, it's my fault that this has happened. And neither parent nor child, it's neither's fault. It's the individual who did this behavior. It's their fault. Just because they're allowed access to an individual does not give them permission to do whatever. So that's a big point that I want, survivors, individuals to know, that it's not your fault, no matter how that person came into your life. If you welcomed them in, or if someone welcomed them in, it's not your fault at all. And also to, speak up, give it a name. I think that was a big thing too, to make sure that individuals have a name to these things. Bullying in the last, 5 or 10 years, bullying has been really big in the news and different things like that, just because of the consequences. People taking their own lives because they've been bullied. So when we are able to put a name to these behaviors, I think people are able to understand it a little bit more, and then they're able to say, you know what, yeah, that did happen to me, and I'm not alone, and this is what I can do to move forward or to stop it from happening. Or if I see it happening to someone else, this is what I can do to, stop it from happening to other people.
I think that's one of the things I really like about your book is that it's very explicit in the sense that everything is named. Nothing's really held back, and um, there's no dancing around something. It's just very clear about what's described, and then you put in those excerpts about explaining in a professional way what's going on and where to reach out for help. So, has there been any feedback from your book that surprised you? Maybe people who you hadn't met who became readers, or maybe and even people in your personal life too.
I've the feedback that I have been getting has been so far positive. The biggest thing is that, of course, it is a difficult read just because of the content that's in it. I've heard a lot of the time that they needed it did make them cry. Either they felt for Rain, or that it brought up something within them that they were able to resonate with, and it evoked some type of emotion within them. So the feedback that I've been getting thus far has been positive. From other people, I mean, there are some people who, the biggest thing is they want a second book, which I don't know if I have that in me right now. So that may be something in the near future.
Mhm. It's interesting because I was reading through the book and I thought, okay, I was absorbing it all, recognizing, what's happening and feeling empathy and feeling, oh, there's the parts that I could relate to. I was like, oh yeah, this is really interesting seeing it from this perspective. And I thought to myself, I made it through. I didn't cry, right? And then I got to the very last page and I started to cry. The page where you're writing, a letter to your daughters, um, just being very heartfelt. And I don't know, I just couldn't hold back the tears. And was it your children who you, I know you said your friend inspired you to write the book, but did your children in any way inspire part of the book as well for you? Was this a message that you especially wanted them to have?
I wanted them to know, I think, know if anything like this has happened to them, that I would be open to hearing and I would believe them. Um, I wanted them to know that if these things again were part of their past, that I did want them to speak up and let someone know. Um, I work with individuals all the time who it happened when they were 8 and they are 54. They
Mhm.
never told anyone until they got to therapy. So they lived all those years with this huge secret, and that can definitely do something to someone. So I don't want them to have to carry that burden, if you will, alone. It's also my job to help them work through it if there's anything that was brought up to them. I have 2 girls, only one of them read it. One is not. Um, I don't think she's ready to read it. She's a more sensitive soul. However, the type of books that she does read, it's kind of weird that this would be a more sensitive topic. But my oldest one who did read it, she the feedback from her was, pretty positive in regards to, the content that was in the book. And like everyone else, is there going to be a second book? Where do we go from here, type of a thing. So yeah.
I suppose that it's different to read from your mother's perspective, right? It's just from your father's perspective. It's just different when it's coming from a parent and you're reading through some of the experiences that they may have experienced themselves or encountered through other people. And so um, maybe your daughter, maybe your other daughter will, maybe she just needs to prepare herself.
Mhm.
But I do recommend this book. It's very eye-opening. I think it's a book that people need to read, even if there's some passages that might make them feel triggered. It's
Mhm.
important to be open to discussing these issues, even if you're just discussing them with yourself through writing down your feelings in the journal part of it. The trauma is something that many people do try to block from their minds, and your book is focused on shining a light on trauma and giving readers supportive tools to work on healing from trauma. So, what do you think are the positive impacts from journaling about traumatic experiences?
So when you're journaling, and it's not just really trauma, anything, if you're journaling about your anxiety or depression, it helps you reflect on exactly what's going on with you. It helps you understand your triggers, what is what's stemming from, what's the anxiety stemming from, or the, the traumas. When you One of the biggest exercises that I do when I am working with trauma individuals is a journal entry, meaning writing a letter to their childhood self, or whatever age the abuse happened, or that one would be to the perpetrator. Um, those two exercises, the one to yourself is what I use, is for more of saying goodbye to that childhood self, because we get stuck in the pain and the hurt of the child. So when we're able to say goodbye to that, then we start welcoming our adult self and understanding that as an adult, you have a voice. As an adult, you have the opportunity to keep yourself safe. The letter to the perpetrator is, of course, letting them know how this has impacted your life, and you're taking your power back. You're going to say, you're not allowing, what has happened to you to define you, and you're no longer going to hold the responsibility of what this person has done to you. You're going to put the responsibility on them, that, just because I was 8 years old and you were, I didn't want to eat my peas, you didn't have to smack me across the floor and leave my lip bloody. We don't want to take that responsibility on. So in writing the letter to the perpetrator, it's pushing that responsibility off on them, and you're taking your power back. So with journaling, it does help, release some of that pain and hurt that the individual may be feeling. And again, it helps them recognize the patterns. There are trauma responses, how when we go through things, it impacts the way that we think, the way that we make decisions, the people we allow around us. And that may be stemming from, the response of our trauma. So when you're journaling and working with a professional, again, you're able to hopefully identify those types of patterns and work through them and create new, healthier patterns. So journaling is really good. I know people get stuck on, how do I journal? What am I supposed to journal about? So again, this is why you work with a professional, because each professional is going to want it to be different. They may be looking for something different to move you through the process of what your goal is. But if you're just doing it by yourself, you're reading the book and you're like, okay, let me go at this a little bit. I'm just gonna, journal. I believe in the book, it says, just journal, reflect on what this chapter says for you, what resonates with you, what did you relate to about this one chapter. So that's why each chapter has that space for you, for a reader, just to go in and reflect on that particular chapter, whether it be the poem at the beginning, rather it be the story, rather it be the educational pieces, or the last part is the inspirational piece, where there's different quotes just to help individuals to empower themselves. So even if it's a quote that stood out to you, write that down. Remind yourself of that. Repeat that to yourself to help you take back that power, and become a healthier version of you.
Absolutely. And I think too that Rain to Rain will, I hope that it inspires other adults who, as you said, as children, if these circumstances happen to them, they didn't realize that they could use their voice, and maybe they just didn't feel they had a voice. Now, as an adult, they do. And maybe hopefully they'll be on the lookout for these types of circumstances happening and being somebody to be a voice for any children they know, this could be happening too. I don't think you have to be a mental health professional, a therapist, a counselor to do that, just to watch out for someone.
Exactly. I mean, we all hear things, and we all have avenues or people that we trust, hopefully, where if you're talking with someone and they feel that they can't go to someone, you can always be that advocate for them and, ask them, I know this person, I really want, you don't have to go at this alone. So yeah, you don't necessarily have to be a professional to be able to help someone. You can help your friend, you can help a parent, a sister, anyone.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, um, I know that you said that people have asked you if there's a follow-up book to Rain to Rain. You said you don't have it in you right now, but well, I was left wondering at the end of reading the book, is there a happily ever after for Rain? Have there been some good things? Um, Big changes? What are your thoughts?
So you would have to wait for the next book. So I mean, with Rain, there is she's been through a lot. She has stood the test of time. She's resilient, she's courageous, she's brave. She's telling her story, she's letting it all hang out there for individuals. And with her story, there are some good times that she may want to share and how she got to that point. I do think that it's important that we do share that it's not just all bad traumas and different things like that, unhealthy behaviors that has happened, but also showing that coming from that you can end up in this good spot. So Rain has had some good things after that book, and she is on a path to still, of course, healing herself and living her dream, whatever that dream is, and hoping that she can touch the next person and help them become the healthiest version of themselves. So there are some good things in her future, and I'm hopefully will put all of that on paper when I'm feeling up to it and able to do so. But yeah, she has a very bright and happy future.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that. That makes me feel very glad and hopeful and excited to see what happens in the next book, to get that follow up. And thank you so much, Cherokee Cabell, for being on the podcast. Thank you to everyone who's watching the Pure Passion Biz Podcast. I'm going to ensure that Cherokee's contact information is in the video description box so that you can get in touch with her and you can get your own copy of Rain to Rain. Thank you, Cherokee, for being on my podcast today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You're most welcome. Thank you for watching and have a great day.